I just want to be really clear about, it's going to look very much like your life looks like right now, but it's going to have some fundamental shifts in the approaches that you take to solving the problems that you're striving to solve. Because really, we're problem-solving beings. Our brains are wired to ask and answer questions, and we're here solving problems. So when you solve problems in a mission-driven way, with a mission mindset, you just do it differently, and it blesses the world in way better ways. Let me just go to this really quickly. So in the book, I talk about why mission. Why am I using the word mission instead of and there's some really great books, Purpose-Driven Life, like this idea of purpose. But when I actually went to the definitions, let me read this to you. So the definition of purpose is something set up as an object or end to be attained, to propose as an aim to oneself. To propose as an aim to oneself. I want to emphasize that. That which a person sets before himself. That which a person sets before himself as an object to be reached or accomplished. Okay? Now I want you to think about the difference between those phrases and this definition of mission. A specific task with which a person or a group is charged. A person being sent or delegated by authority with certain powers for transacting a commission, any number of persons appointed by authority to perform any service. Now, the words that are used in both those definitions are very different, and the purpose is very much I'm coming up with something that I want to do. I'm creating goals for myself. I'm appointing this as an aim for myself. I'm setting before myself an object to be reached or accomplished. But the mission definition is just thick with meaning. It's that you're charged with something, you're called to something, and it's an authority that does it. So it's someone who knows what's needed, and they're calling you to that. And you feel driven to do this thing, but you're also not alone. You're not alone in it because you or a group of people are called to it, and it's given to you by an authority who has power and oversight and aid to give to you. You're given powers for transacting your commission, and you're appointed by the authority to perform the service. I mean, just think about how rich that is for a minute. What does that mean? That means that while it's nice to have a life purpose, it's far better to have a life mission. If you want to fill that gap of meaning in your life that you need, people will make all kinds of sacrifices for meaning, for a mission that they will never make just for their own happiness. It's too shallow. In fact, let me quote this. This is, see if I can find this. This is Viktor Frankl. He says, don't aim at success. And in this case, I would say, don't aim at mission, and don't aim at happiness. He says, the more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success is like happiness. And like mission, it cannot be pursued, but it must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself. What really makes people thrive in life is submitting to something that's more than just them. I say often that self-love is not self-indulgence, because it is not about us. It's about the others. And that doesn't mean that we don't meet our needs and treat ourselves really beautifully along the way, because I talk about that a lot. But it means that we are submitting to something higher than ourselves, and we are dedicating our service, our energy, our gifts, our talents to something in partnership with God. And again, it isn't a one-time event either. If we look back on George Washington's life, there's not this moment. What was his mission? To be the president? Was that more important than to fight the war? Was that more important than to run, his message to the Native Americans in the French and Indian War and then have his journal printed? Was that more important than going out and surveying and learning surveyorship? Was that more important than his practices with building his character in his daily habit that he wrote down? I can't remember what it's called right now. All of those were him partnering with God to live a mission-driven life with a mission mindset that was focused on character. It was focused on servant leadership. It was focused on real love, which is nurturing your own and others' spiritual growth. And he did the next right thing. And he didn't care what the cost was because he knew what was right. And he leaned on God to give him the powers, the gifts, the talents, the resources to be able to succeed. It's a life of faith. It's a life of struggle. It's a life fraught with purpose, but the purpose is deeper because it's mission, and there's missions. All of those things were just, it might be, if I sat down with George Washington right now, he might tell me that it was just as difficult for him to run the message in the French and Indian War as it was to fight, the Revolutionary War, or as it was to be president, or as it was to run his farm. Like, I don't even know what he would say were some of his biggest battles, and his life wasn't perfect, and there were moments when it looked very glorious and it looked very extraordinary. This is why in the back of my book, I talk about that these 7 laws empower ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Because if you follow the lives of the Ten Boom family, whose lives I catalog in the book, they're very ordinary people. They're not really beautiful. They're not really extra strong. They're not. Now, Willem went on to get an advanced degree, but they didn't have a lot of formal, extensive education. They weren't wealthy at all. They didn't have an extraordinary career. Father repaired watches and his family helped him, and it looks very ordinary. But their lives were extraordinary because they became extraordinary people. I was talking to my business coach mentor recently about, there's just these places that I want to go and people I want to meet and things that, I want people to know about what we're doing here because it's having such a positive impact. And what do I need to do to get there? Maybe I need to be more accountable for all these check boxes and doing all these activities. And he said, the activities are only helpful. And he's absolutely right. The activities are only helpful to the extent that they cause you to become someone. And when you are a certain kind of person, you'll just be with other people that are like that. And that's kind of what's so rich in our academy, is that like-minded people are with like-minded people. People that want to live a mission-driven life are now with other people who want to build a mission-driven life. And it's catapults them forward. And it's the community that they always wanted, because they knew they wanted growth and they knew they wanted to be more, but they didn't know how to find the people that wanted the same thing. And so what we're seeing today is a lot of deep human hunger for purpose, for meaning, that is being wrenched away from the natural moral law, wrenched out of context with a relationship with a higher being, and that's causing it to, that problem, that innate human problem, is people are trying to solve it by assigning themselves goals and assigning themselves purposes without reference to the character building that would go on, or who they're submitting to, what they're submitting to do, who they're trying to serve. And I know that in the business world, we throw around some of these phrases, but it's often really shallow, because at the end of the day, we all just know that money matters most. And so mission mindset, that's what you want to focus on. Mission-driven living, from mission to mission to mission to mission, from call to call to call to call. And years ago, I would say that I heard the call, in my own life to work on myself. I heard the call to work on my marriage. I heard the call to have children and strive to be a good mom. I heard the call to work on my education. And I heard the call to start my first book club. And I didn't want to do it. And it was in service to the community, and it was a distraction, and it cost me time and energy, and it led to another thing and led to another thing. And which of those things was the most important call? All of them. All of them were the most important call. Because if I hadn't done that thing, I wouldn't have done the next thing, and I wouldn't have done the next thing. So I hope that this clarifies a little bit for you, maybe why you're not feeling as the kind of deep meaning, rich purpose that you're really wanting in your life. Maybe you're just kind of trying to be an island and doing a little bit of thinking and coming up with something that seems like a great idea. And you're not discovering your greatest gifts, and you're not talking to God about it. And you're not doing the things prior to, maybe you're wanting to do something really big before you've done the small. Maybe you want to change the world before you clean your room. And principles build on each other, and there is a hierarchy, and we must live the first ones first. We have to change ourselves before we try to help the world. And we can't change the world, we can just serve the world. And you've got to be the kind of person that's already a servant leader before you can actually serve. Because the way, this is totally what Jesus meant when he said that you've got to lose yourself to find yourself. That doesn't mean that you don't still matter and count 100%. It just means that it's not self-serving, and that you're not trying to put the cart before the horse, and you're not trying to fix everybody else before you've been honest about where you need fixing. So you start right now where you are. You do the next thing you know you need to do, and you let God know that you're in this with him. And you answer the next small baby call that comes. Maybe it's to call someone. Maybe it's to run an errand. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, I've run in church circles all my life. I've been a churchgoer and a religious person. But one of the things that I find happens a lot in those circles of very, very God-fearing people who want this kind of life is there's a lot of, it's enough to do the little thing. And what I'm going to say is, it's enough to start with the little thing. But it's not enough to end with the little thing. We can't spend 30, 40, 50 years going to church telling ourselves that it's enough to take casseroles, because that's wonderful, but that's not all you're capable of. And that's not the only call God has for you. And it will grow and expand as you grow and expand. And so work on what's next for you, but understand that God has many missions for you, and he can send you on grander and grander calls only when he knows you're completely trustworthy, because you always answer the small calls. And know that it will start with the small calls, but it won't end with the small calls, because the world is screaming for leadership. They need your servant leadership, and God has big plans for you. But it doesn't start with the big plans. It starts with the little plans, and it starts with the difference between purpose and mission. So decide right now that you're going to live a mission-driven life. Decide to take the first steps. There's a million ways you can learn about that, a million places to start, but start with the small things that will lead to the next thing, that will lead to the big things, so that we can partner in living mission-driven lives to try to make the world a little bit better than we found it. Hey, are you ready to have the truth set you free? Head over to audreyrindlisbacher.com and get the Truth Seeker Starter Kit for free, where I walk you through the 5 steps for discovering and applying true principles to your life so you can experience their liberating power. See you there.